All practicing psychologists, Freud and Jung included, derived many of their most important insights from their patients' perceptions. Equally, schizophrenics are often demonstrably telepathic and, quote, psychic. I well recall sitting opposite a schizophrenic girl in a state hospital, listening to her disconnected stream of apparently meaningless verbiage, when I began to notice that mingled in with the rest of the material were images and associations that I was silently experiencing. Indeed, the inability to distinguish their own thoughts and fantasies from the equally vividly perceived thoughts and fantasies of others is part of the reason for the schizophrenic terror. All of the above considerations apply also to the temporary state of extended perception and awareness induced by psychedelic drugs. For someone whose ego concept is sufficiently flexible to assimilate them, the experiences can provide valuable insight into his own psychic processes and the factors obstructing his growth. For someone whose life images are dominated by fear and defensiveness, or who is given the experience without adequate preparation or support, the drugs can produce more or less temporary disorganization and destructive effects. Although there have been and are in the West numerous individuals who have opened the, quote, doors of perception and seen beyond, artists, mystics, saints, and sensitives, yet a truly scientific school of psychophysical transformation has not operated openly since the time of Pythagoras. The essence of the scientific method is verifiable and repeatable observation, either in natural settings or in specially arranged experimental settings. Unless an individual is able to demonstrate the observation he has made, it cannot become part of scientific data. Hence the need of a teacher who can teach not theories but methods. Methods that will reliably give results and enable others to perceive the same phenomena and relationships. No such teacher or methods were available to the early introspectionist school of psychology, so their observations were unrepeatable and hence led to naught. From this failure, and from a mistaken analogy to physics, the behaviorist school, which in one form or another still dominates American psychology, drew the erroneous conclusion that objective observation of subjective states is impossible, and the only scientifically valid data are the recordable physical movements and verbal marks and utterances of others. In fact, as already pointed out, such observation is possible, but to be objective about one's inner states requires the difficult, lengthy, and poorly understood process of freeing oneself from inherited and acquired perceptual images and mechanisms. This process of liberation is the central concern of schools of transformation in ancient and modern times. And once this step has been taken, once we are able to recognize accurately our own inner states, it is also possible, contrary to what behaviorist-inspired psychology teaches, to make reliable observations about the inner states of others. Everyone knows that we can often tell with intuition what another is feeling without being told. Dr. Kauragula, from her extensive interview studies of sensitives, reports that such individuals are consistently able to see 3 sets of force field around any person. A, quote, vital field, which reflects the state of health or mental activity level of the person observed. A mental field, which reflects the disease of the organism, and an emotional field, which varies with the nature and intensity of feeling. All sensitives agree anonymously that their abilities are merely extensions of faculties potential within everyone, that they are not paranormal. The teachings of the School of Actualism are resigned to actualize these potentials, to free perception from imprinted images so that awareness can expand into the many levels of consciousness that lie beyond our usual awareness. Besides behaviorism, the other major influence in modern psychology is, of course, Freud and psychoanalysis. And it is to Freud's credit that he took the bull by the horns and grappled with the problems of resistance and defense mechanisms directly. In so doing, he came upon the then astounding, though now commonplace, fact that there are many things going on in our psyches of which we are not aware, even though they influence our thoughts, our feelings, our behavior, both voluntary and especially involuntary, and our dreams. His analysis and identification of the defense mechanisms of repression, denial, isolation, projection, displacement, conversion, and others was groundbreaking detective work that enabled one to trace the historical origin of many neurotic and psychotic symptoms to particular inner or outer events of childhood. His delineation of the stages of development through oral, anal, phallic, and genital phases was evidently valid in broad outline and confirmable by other investigators. From an actualist viewpoint, though, his work was limited to the human, the body, and the organ levels of consciousness, omitting both higher and lower levels. Freud was the type of person who liked to build mental systems and structures, and the various synthesis of his ideas, which he continually developed and revised during his lifetime, bear witness to the fertility of his creative imagination. But since they were often based on data and observations that he had neither the inclination nor the ability to verify and confirm, they have not been widely accepted except by those who prefer to let others do their observing and thinking for them. His followers and disciples all developed divergent theories and points of view based on the equally unverified and unverifiable observations they made. The weak point in Freud's entire work was, of course, the method, the technique of free association, which is actually not free at all, since it follows the fixed patterns of neurotic mechanisms. These mechanisms, originally programmed as defensive mechanisms, have become, through associative processes linking them with false to facts images, destructive rather than defensive. The free association technique, which consists of a passive following of associative processes, enables one to trace the connections and relationships between instinctual impulses and defense mechanisms, and to uncover feelings and ideas which had been kept hidden, sometimes from early childhood. But unfortunately, the method, even when supplemented by the analyst's interpretations, did not free one from these mechanisms.